Minimum wage increases have been spreading across the country as one way to help out the working poor. But Fox News has a different theory on how we can accomplish that. It doesn't involve their pay at all. They should simply give up the right to bear children. Let's watch.
There are some people, you know, we all know, abuse the system. They go on it for years. But there are others who, you know, run into a tough spot and they might have to go on public assistance for a while. What's the matter with putting the list out there of the people who are winding up with money out of the taxpayer's pocket?
Thanks so much, Steve. So the real shame here is that our minimum wage in this country is a poverty wage. And the fact is, it's not enough anymore to lift a family of 3 out of poverty. Raising the minimum wage to $12 an hour would actually save $53 billion in food stamps over the next 10 years. That's the way to get people off public assistance.
Seton, it sounds like she would like to see a list of the employers who are paying less than $15 an hour.
Well,
which is different than the list of people on welfare.
Yeah, once again, let's shame the people who are creating jobs rather than, you know, shaming the people who are receiving welfare. And of course, she's got half the table right on raising the minimum wage. Of course, the number of people on assistance will explode because of all the jobs that will be killed as a result of the raising of the minimum wage. The problem is a family of 3 is not supposed to be living on a minimum wage. If you're making minimum wage, you shouldn't be having children and being on and trying to raise a family on it.
So
that is one idea. It's one opinion.
So it's almost like ripped right from the parables of Jesus. The old, hey, poor people, keep it in your pants, right? I think that's what Jesus said.
Yeah,
if you're poor, keep it in your pants. Yeah. Also, I like how he says, oh, we don't want to shame job creators. Let's shame poor people.
Let's shame poor people.
You're poor, shame on you.
Well, because that's the one thing that public assistance and welfare have always lacked, a sense of shame.
A sense of shame.
There's never been, nobody has ever tried to make them feel shame. It's just truly amazing.
It's like, did they, like, who raised these people?
Yeah,
right? It's some
assholes.
kind of, yes.
Probably upper class assholes.
I'm gonna guess.
I love the idea of, first of all, should we shame the job creators? Should we shame those on welfare? I don't give a fuck about shame. It's a made-up word that doesn't actually mean anything. How about we talk about the policy that would be best for this country, which she attempts to do, and then he responds with, like, look, I don't want to get into another discussion about sexism in the media. Could there have been a more sexist response than, sounds like she wants a different list than the one we were talking about. Her with her lists of people who are being kept by their company on starvation wages and thus have to go on the public assistance that they want to cut anyway, which we could change if we were to simply raise their pay to a level where they don't end up on food stamps, SNAP, or other sorts of welfare or public assistance.
So don't let people, so this is very easy to debunk because those guys, they never quote any studies because there's no studies that show that raising the minimum wage hurts the economy or costs people jobs. It's the exact opposite. It helps it's demand side it's Keynesian economics, right? So it's the opposite of supply side economics. Supply side economics is you give money to the rich guy who owns the thing, and then he's going to spend that money, and then that's going to create commerce because he's going to go buy a yacht. Well, we got to have people build the yacht. He's going to go buy a car. Somebody's got to build a car. The problem with that is that guy can only buy one yacht probably. He'll probably only buy maybe 5 or 10 cars. Whereas if he has 2,000 or 3,000 employees, they're all going to buy 2,000 or 3,000 cars. They have to buy 2,000 or 3,000 houses. So if you give them the money, if the money goes into their pockets, that's what really helps boost an economy. And in fact, that rich guy would make even more money, which is what happened under FDR, which is what Keynes did. And Keynes told people after World War I to do this. And he said, if you don't do this, what you're going to do is create an environment where a right-wing demagogue can come along and take control of the country, which is what happened with Hitler, right? And so after World War II, everyone said, hey, maybe we should listen to Keynes this time. And they did what he said, and they rebuilt Germany, and they gave people, and now Germany's the strongest economy, and with the strongest minimum wage, free education.
With ethical companies like VW.
And unions, they have strong unions.
Yes.
Right?
Another thing that we used to have when we were economically powerful and dynamic.
Right. So don't listen to those people who say that raising the minimum wage is going to cost jobs, it's going to hurt. It doesn't do any of those things. It helps people. Demand-side economy, Keynesian economics, it's what FDR did. But what happened is their Democratic Party got hijacked by Bill Clinton and his neoliberalism, and now we've lost our roots. No Democrats, they're all in bed with Wall Street. And so now they know who was against Wall Street? FDR, which is why you never heard Barack Obama talk about FDR, right? Because he is one of the Wall Street guys. If you know anything, you know Barack Obama during the crisis in 2008 and 2009, he came to the bankers and said, I'm the one who's going to protect you from the wrath of the pitchforked mob. Yeah. He did do that too, by the way. So that's what's wrong right now with our country. We don't have two parties with two different ideas. We have the Democrats and the Republicans in bed with the same economic people with the same economic bullshit policy, which is why we're still right where we are.
Don't have kids anymore. Very simple.
Don't have
look,
kids.
You will save money that way.
Yes.
But I hear that there's benefits outside of budgetary to having children. It enriches your life or something like that.
Really?
Oh, and it continues the species. That's what I've heard. But we do have a little bit more of Steve Doocy on who's to blame for these minimum wage jobs.
Okay, Rebecca, I'll give you the final word.
Well, I mean, the fact is we've actually got research finding that the cost of low wages in this country is $152 billion per year. That's taxpayers subsidizing low wages in the form of government assistance that people have to turn to. That's the real problem here. Let's raise the minimum wage.
Well, we've had 7 years of the Obama economy. I guess that ultimately is the reason people aren't making that much.
Why not just guess?
Yes, why not just
You've
guess?
got producers. Just guess.
And he even has to look down. He's like, a little piece of shame creeped into him.
A little bit of shame. The shame that should be on the poor was on him instead.
Was on him instead for actually distorting the facts and history, because he was around in 2007 when the economy cratered. He was around, so I think he remembers how good the minimum wage people had it.
That's how powerful Obama was. He created the economy before he became president.
Before he was that's a good joke.
Before that minimum wage, $30 an hour. It was a great time to be alive.
It was a great time to be a minimum wage worker, so I guess.
Yeah. It was better than making more. But anyway, that's what passes for their analysis of the economy. Now, thankfully, she was doing the right thing, pointing out how much money could actually be saved, although it's hard to understand, would actually be saved by raising the minimum wage. Now, thankfully, despite the fact that we have very little momentum on a national level to do so, there have been a number of different cities that have taken it upon themselves, including LA, Seattle, and other places to do that, and that is certainly a good sign.